Well, welcome everybody to session 2 of the best way to get your child work as an actor or commercial model. This is the workshop with Aaron Marcus, and boy, we had a great session. The first session, Aaron, it's been really good. This session, we actually have a guest with us, Bob Luke. I'm going to go ahead and introduce him right now. Bob Luke is the owner of Bob Luke Studios in New York and Los Angeles. Has been a professional acting coach and casting consultant for film, TV, and stage projects across the country, and a personal talent manager on both coasts. He was previously on the set acting coach for The Cosby Show, films with Ron Howard, Mel Gibson, Meryl Streep, and Wes Craven, among others, and several New York soap operas. More recently, Bob's worked with several of the voices in the live action feature Racing Stripes, including Whoopi Goldberg, Joe, and Mandy Moore. He's discovered and guided many actors, young and old, to stardom, including supermodels, professional athletes, and numerous Miss USAs. Bob recently finished working with a wonderful young actress, 7-year-old Rachel Covey, on the set of the new Disney live-action musical fairy tale feature Enchanted, starring Amy Adams, Patrick Dempsey, and Susan Sarandon. I'll tell you what, Bob, welcome to the workshop today. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much. Good to be here.
Hey, Bob, so nice to have you here. And one thing that Joel forgot to mention about your credits is that Bob is one of the really nice guys in the industry as well. And so just wanted to throw that in there.
Hey, Bob, thank you. How much do I owe you for that?
Hey, I've got a number of questions for you, but the first one, and I know I'm kind of jumping out of order and out of line, but I just want to make sure that I don't forget about this one, because tons of people have asked me when they're getting their kids started in the industry and they want to start getting some acting work, and they just put together a headshot. From your experience, at what age does a child need to create a resume?
Well, resume serves a lot of different purposes. One certainly is to tell us the experience they have had. And if a child very young did commercials as babies or print jobs or things, you can put that on. But the resume also makes sure of one very simple thing, that your name and a contact phone number or your representation are on the back of your headshot. So I think every parent should start building a resume and having a format for a resume so they can just continually add to it, no matter how old the child is. It doesn't need to be filled up with stuff, but we also like to know what the child is good at. The special skills, certainly. So like for an adult, it would be, or a teenager, that they have their driver's license. But for a small child, if they're really good with colors, if they can juggle, if they like animals, if they like eating vegetables, that would be a big sell, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting, because and that was something else I was going to ask you. Certainly it's everybody knows what special skills are for adults. Like you were saying, can drive a 5-speed, can contort their bodies fit into a suitcase or speak foreign languages. But it comes to little kids. You mentioned a couple of interesting types of special skills that I hadn't really thought of, but I guess it could, be anything from, jumping rope to, or, other things like that, maybe not all kids could do.
Right. Some kids are raised on a farm and are very good with animals, can ride horses right off the bat. Some are quicker than I was on a bicycle. I couldn't learn until I was 23. But the things that they're good at, if they're, we often get a very precocious child, she's very good at listening and taking direction and these things. Those are things that we'll find out when we meet them and talk to them. But if they like to play sports, if they're energetic and just the little things that they do, I mean, that's where a parent really needs to kind of step back and be objective and look at their child and go, they're pretty good at that.
So I assume then for a child's resume, you would put date of birth.
Yes. Well, it's important, as with everyone, Whereas as you get a little bit older, we don't need to know your age so much, but it is still important to your representation to know your age, because if we put you on a set, like the Screen Actors Guild, after the unions have specific amounts of hours that you're allowed to work at a certain age. So that's why we like often working with older kids to play younger.
And maybe you can talk, just a little bit about, I know there are companies out there where they get hired and actually tutor kids on set.
There are the On Location Education Organization on both coasts now, Alan Simon, director, do a brilliant job. They're hired by the production company because we have to provide schooling on a film set or a television set for the kids who are there, who would be in school at that time. And they must get in 3 hours a day of schooling. No matter how many hours of shooting they actually do, they have to get in 3 hours a day of school. And if there are a bunch of kids working, then we may have various tutors that come in to teach different subjects, especially for like high school age. If they're younger, generally we'll have one teacher who can handle different ages or different grades, for 1 or 2 or 3 kids. And they keep it interesting for them, but they're in there every day. No, you don't get to skip school. It's very important to them.
And so how exactly does that work? Does the tutor contact the child's school so that they have a very clear understanding of what classes they're working on, what specific topics they're working on, or is that the parent's responsibility to bring that information to the tutor?
No, it's that's why the film production companies hire people like On Location Education, because they're very good at it. They get the child's school. They have paperwork that is to be filled out by them. The parents can help supplement that, but there is contact with the school and through the parent. So it's a very well-oiled machine.
And does the child have to maintain a certain grade point average, or get certain grades in order to be able to continue to work?
Absolutely. I don't know that there's, well, yeah, if a kid's not doing good in school, just whether there's a law or not that says they can't, you're looking at their work ethic and their ability to complete a project. Those sort of things, I think, are more important to us than the actual laws about it, because who wants to hire a kid that won't finish the things that if a kid's going out to audition for things, being a good reader is important. So we definitely look at the grades. Most representatives, agents and managers, generally are not going to take on a child who is doing less than a good solid C average.
And speaking of parents, so if a child that you're managing is going out shooting a movie, they're out for a month, out on a different coast, does a parent always go with the child? How does that work?
Yes, there must be a guardian with them at all times. And I have had situations with clients who have after the mom got the kid out and started, then the dad would take over for a week or so, and then the uncle, then the grandparents, but it has to be someone with basically a power of attorney to be able to get them to the hospital, or and give attorney have the power of attorney to be able to say yes, you can operate or whatever in case of an emergency. But there must be a guardian with them all the time.
And they would be sitting on the set as well?
Yeah, generally right there at the edge of the set. Obviously there are times we'll put them in a green room or something, but they're always in view.
And then do the parents get compensated in any way? Do they have their travel taken care of, hotels? Are they given a per diem, or?
When you're on the set with your child is the one being paid. The child actually gets the hotel room, but obviously it's put in the parent's name, for putting you in the location. So The parent obviously gets the accommodations and things because they're there with the child. The parent is generally not compensated financially for it. You know, I mean, it can always, per diems and things are always, a good agent can perhaps talk to a production company about, a little punch here and there for, if they really want a child. But generally, the child is booking a job. It's like if somebody wanted to book you, they wouldn't necessarily pay your wife for letting you come.
Well, that's true. And how about, because a lot of times I know you hear these horror stories of, parents who all of a sudden decide to manage their kids, and the kids made fortunes, and the kids wound up completely broke. And then, I mean, I know that they have there's like the Coogan Law, which is a way of protecting the kid. Is that something you can talk a little bit about?
Sure. The Coogan Law is based on Jackie Coogan, who some of our older listeners will remember from the original Addams Family series on television. He was Uncle Fester, and the original Uncle Fester. But as a child, he was the hottest child actor out there. Did a lot of major films. Was in a time when $1 million was really, really $1 million, which means it would be like it could be 50, 100 million today. He was a millionaire as a child. When he hit 21 and was able to really get out on his own and use his money, there was nothing in the bank. His parents had used it all. So the Coogan Law is meant to protect the child by creating a trust fund that takes in a minimum of 15% of the child's income. It goes into account until he's over 21, where he can utilize it, and no one can touch it. And it's a minimum of 15%. It's again, we do everything we can to protect the child and their interest, both now and in the future. And certainly the unions are doing that. Each state has the Coogan Law has had to pass, through each state. As for parents deciding that they know enough to become managers, they have to remember that most kids managers actually started out as parents, but it took them 10, 15 years to learn enough about the business and make enough contacts before they try to start managing. Being a manager is not necessarily about being, I'm a good parent to my kid, I do all the things, I handle all that stuff. So I should be able to do that for other kids. The idea is that as a manager, you have to have contacts. You have to be able to have contacts with the agents, so you can get the kids represented by an agent or seen by agents, known to the casting directors. You have to be able to do that whole side as well. So a parent has the hardest job, I think, and their job should always be to be the parent. A lot of cases when a child becomes very successful, the parent becomes the child and allows the child to take control. And that's one of the worst things they can do. For me, a parent needs to remember that their job is to, yes, they're the cook, they're the chauffeur, they're the babysitter, they do, all the things that they should do, all the things they would do if their child wasn't in show business. And they have to maintain that sense of being the disciplinarian, that the child should not be allowed to, just because they're the one making the money, start making the rules.
I was just going to say, for parents who, have seen other successful parents manage their kids, the other thing that runs into issues, along with not having the contacts, but also, when you're discussing things with agents, and I realize it's the agent that's going to actually throw out numbers as to what their child actor is going to be getting for a feature film or for a sitcom or things like that. But the manager, I'm assuming, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, I assume that you as a manager would also be able to give input to the agent and say, hey, look, my client's not going to take less than $20,000, for this particular project. Now it's up to you to negotiate it. But if it's a parent that really doesn't have the sophistication and the knowledge of the industry, they're not going to have a clue.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the manager obviously does have input. The agent by law is the one who has to negotiate the contracts. But the manager is really the closest to the talent. They're the one that I get the calls in the middle of the night from one of my female clients, 2 in the morning. Bob, my boyfriend just broke up with me. I'm worried about her 9 a.m. audition. So, you have your stuff. I've had people sleep on my couch, prepping. You spend time on the phone with them. You don't have hours. And so you're very intricate part of the machinery there, the family, so to speak. And so the agent wants the manager's input. They want to know if there's something that the client maybe isn't necessarily telling them. And a parent really doesn't always have that kind of influence, obviously, in talking to the agent, or they don't know the right things to say, or the things that are necessary that the child may need on the set. Kids have different things, certainly, in the world today with all the different kinds of medications and things that kids need to be on. A parent knows that, but they very often are more cautious about saying, well, my child has, this or that. I need to, we need this or that. That's where the manager steps in. The manager is often kind of a buffer. I do the same thing as a coach on the set. I'm a buffer between the parents and the director often, to help both get what they need.
And I guess the nice thing is that, if you're playing the good cop, bad cop routine, you can be the bad guy, and your client, the child actor, is not running into battles with directors and producers. And you're the one who can, really call the shots, and at least, the child is still having a good relationship and doesn't even have to be party or even aware of what's going on, because, their job is to act, not to have to negotiate things and start talking about issues that are coming up.
That's the point. A child is a child. And if they're hired as an actor, they're an actor. If we hired Kiefer Sutherland, he is an actor. His job should not be to have to go to the director and tell him what he wants. That's what he has representation for. So, and the parents, there's that kind of unfortunate title, of being a stage mother or a stage dad, which is not really a bad thing. I mean, a good stage parent who understands what is going on, understands the parameters of the entire project, and knows what is necessary to make the project better. And then they can be of a great help to a director by making sure their child is prepared for those things. But unfortunately, we often, because some parents get a little too caught up in the in show business too quickly, and it becomes their career instead of their child's, that's where we get that sort of dreaded phrase of, title of stage mother, the parent who is in the way that the director doesn't want anything to do with. I've known cases where we had a child on the East Asia tour of Annie, and they asked for one of the moms to be sent back to the States and have another member of the family come because the mom was just a little too overbearing and scared the other children.
Oh, my goodness. And I assume that there are probably managers as well as agents who have decided not to take a kid on because the parent is just too impossible, and you don't need to live your life like that.
Every day, our job is hard enough. The casting director's job is hard enough. Certainly, the director's job is hard enough to get out a good film. That the last thing in the world we need is to work with someone who already thinks they know more than we do. We don't even know what we know. There's so many days I'm doing something, I go, I can't believe I just did that stupid thing. I forgot what a refrigerator was saying. I was talking on the phone with somebody else. I just got a new, it's a white thing. It's in the kitchen. It's like, and we have brain lapses. We're so focused on things that if a parent thinks that they know as much as we know, they got to be nuts because we don't even know it.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to. Sorry, we kick 1, 2, 3. You go.
Your turn.
Okay. What I was going to say was, even some of the things that you need to do as a manager that parents probably wouldn't have a clue about. I mean, let's say, the kid is from, the Midwest. All of a sudden, he's being sent out to LA. Now he needs new headshots, needs to take some acting classes. Well, certainly if he wanted to study with you, okay, so you would be there. But, if it's a parent, how is the parent going to really know what photographers are the people, which ones, should their child go to, or what would be the best classes? It sounds like those are some of the things that you as a manager, have to be on top of so that you can really handle everything, for your talent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You go to the people who are knowledgeable, and you can do a lot of homework. You can pull up websites of photographers in LA or New York. That's how you find representatives. These days the computer is such a great tool, such a great library that's definitely places to go. But ask the people who are knowledgeable when you do have meetings with them. Ask them who they recommend. What photographers do they like to see the work from? It also tells the representation. Like if someone comes in and starts asking my opinion on things, it makes me feel smart, which I don't get very often. And they, but it's like, okay, this person wants to learn, wants to know my opinion, and then we'll see, do they use that information? If they do, then they're going, okay, that person's already listening to me. That's the sort of person I want to work with.
Well, and the other thing too is when somebody comes to you because you've been in the industry so long and know so many people, you also will not only know who are the photographers that this child should go to, but you're also basing it because look, there are a lot of technically good photographers, or or whether even as an acting class. I'm sure there are plenty of great acting classes, but what you're going to know is what this child is like. Who are they going to respond to the best? And then you could really make this match between not only technically, a great photographer, but one who has the same kind of emotions, who you believe will really be able to create the best kinds of shots with this kid based on who this kid is. And, that's something that really can only be gotten by someone who not only has the contacts, but also knows who these people are personally and knows how they shoot, and who would really ultimately be the best. So I guess as a long roundabout way of saying this, when you're first getting started, and you've got a child, it sounds like it's until you really have been in the industry for a while, it sounds like for all parents, you're much, much better off finding an industry professional, somebody who's been doing this for a while. And I guess really, but one of the questions that I have for you is, what would you recommend parents ask when they're, going to try to meet with managers? Let's say there are a bunch of managers that have expressed an interest. What kinds of questions would be good as a way of really trying to distinguish which one would be best for their child?
You want to know, well, first, so often it's really just kind of a gut feeling, who cares about my child? Why do you like them? If they called you in based on a headshot, what is it, you want to get the feel from the manager what it is they like about the child. Do they just say, I can make money off you? Well, that's, certainly that's what it's about. A manager is they make their living off of you, just as the agent does when you work, or actually when your child works.
And what is the percentage that managers typically get?
Managers, that's the big difference between an agent and a manager. The general answer to that is 5%. The agent is allowed by law to take 10%, That's a talent agent. A talent manager takes 15%. Model manager can take 20% generally, and in more local areas, the talent agents are really more so like managers, but they also, if they're handling print and stuff, they can do 20%.
Or if it's a non-union acting job, 20%.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But that's, you know, the basic rule that you always want to go into the situation considering is that, you know, your agent should take 10%, your manager 15%. I often, depending on the position of my client, if they're like new in the city and starting to do well but have no income behind them, I will often take a lesser percentage so that they get at least like an extra 5% or so they can live, you know, so that they're getting a little bit more of that paycheck, because it's important to me for them to stay, be able to have a home and stay and build their career.
Wow, that's awfully generous. I haven't really heard of that before.
I'm a little odd.
So I guess also maybe another good question is, you know, what kind of roles would you see, you know, my child being submitted for, you know, and see, you know, what the manager has to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for taking me back there. What sort of things would you submit my child for? You find out, would you submit them for Disney, Nickelodeon? Are they better for television? Are you just going to handle them for commercials, or serious films? What sort of things? Also, what clients do you already have that will be going out for those same things? Do you have anyone like my child? If I've already got 5 kids just like your child, then you may not want to go with me, because I'm putting your child into a bunch with 4 others of same type, which means I would try to get all 5 out, but chances are I would only get 2 or 3 out. So you may lose out until the others are working. Again, so much as you get into it, you want to know a little background about your manager. Now, we all have egos. It's we probably wouldn't be in this business if we didn't, to some degree. But we can sometimes go, well, you know, you should know about, you should have done your homework. You should, you know. It's better to get from the horse's mouth, I think. You know, just like we will ask an adult actor or a child actor, tell me about yourself. That's one of our basic questions. So you should be able to do that with your representative. How did you get started? Where are you from? You know, build a relationship, because it becomes, especially with your manager, it's definitely a relationship, not just a working relationship. It can be a very, very close relationship, because your manager and you, if you start making it big, your manager could be right there with you 85% of the time.
Do you mean like even showing up on sets and
going to sets? If you're traveling, you're doing premieres and stuff, right there.
Hey guys, I have a couple questions coming in. Do you have a moment to answer a question or two?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
So one of the questions that we have goes back to the last session, Aaron, and obviously Bob, you can weigh in on this as well. This is more for commercial modeling, but the question was, how often should you update a composite sheet?
I can jump in real quickly with that. 2 times you want to update your composite sheet is 1, if you are beginning to not quite look like those photos, you've got to make that change very quickly. And 2, if you've got better photos that will sell you in a stronger way, those would be the 2 times to put together a new composite sheet.
Okay, great.
Absolutely. And if I can just throw in if you're not getting booked or not getting asked, you know, to come in when you're submitted for things, you've got to reevaluate what are they seeing up first that they're not responding to, and again, then prompting that you know, a change of picture.
Perfect.
That's a great point.
That's your headshot or comp cards.
Okay. So the other question is, my son is interested in acting. Should he memorize a monologue?
Yes. It's we don't use monologues as much as we used to. Nowadays it's scripts, but starting that process of memorizing is a good thing because we'll want to see if they can memorize. So and it's always even though we don't use them as much even for the adults these days for auditions, I always like to have them go into a casting director prepared to offer something that we haven't seen, because very often a casting director will say, you got anything else I can see after you've done the script? You go, yeah, I have a monologue from this. Oh, good. So yes, definitely. Starting to do the things that are done in the business. Watching commercials, taping them, writing them down, and doing them yourself on your camera at home is a great idea to start learning the technique.
Now, Bob, do you ask people to learn contrasting monologues, even for kids? Maybe one, serious monologue, maybe one comedic, or is that kind of overkill for a child?
No. Well, it depends on the child. Let's start with one and then build. But find one that the child likes, and then build upon that. But having a comedic and a dramatic is a great idea, but at the appropriate time. If the child's 6, and I have 5- and 6-year-olds who have monologues memorized and 2 monologues memorized, a lot of them, don't have the patience for it. So you start with one, with a commercial length piece that they can do and memorize. I've got a few adults, so it's a lot easier to get them to memorize a commercial than a whole new monologue. But if you start with a smaller piece, and then as they grow, it builds. But yeah, we generally, as for an adult, I like to have, where they have a comedic piece and a dramatic piece.
Hey, Bob. I'm sorry.
It's good to have one, but not absolutely necessary, because we're generally not going to have you out on the road doing Shakespeare.
Great. Hey, Bob, can you make sure you lean a little closer to your mouthpiece on your phone? We just had a little bit of audio going in and out there. A little bit of a follow-up to that, and Aaron, I guess you're getting ready to ask a question.
One second. I just wanted to jump in. And one key thing is make sure that the monologue is age appropriate. I've seen too many kids doing, whether it's a boy or a girl, just doing things about relationships and and just things that are just so far off base from their age that even if they are talented, I don't even see it because you've lost me already. So make sure it really is age appropriate.
And appropriate, especially appropriate language.
Yeah.
There's so many even monologues that are written these days that have 4-letter words and things in them that just we don't need to hear. They're not part of acting.
Okay. Well, follow up to that question then is I'll ask the question, then I'll kind of clarify, maybe get you guys a little more focused on it. How do you prepare yourself for an audition? And my addition to that question is maybe you could give us like a little checklist to go down. What are the things we need to do, either as a parent or a child, to prepare for an audition, an acting audition?
Bob, you can go first.
Okay.
It's like a tag team match.
Yeah, the first thing if I contact a client and they have an audition for something, the first thing they want to make sure they know is it for film and television? Is it for theater? What is it for? What do they need for the audition? Do they need a monologue? Are there sides for it? Is there a script they will have to learn for it?
Excuse me, Bob, could you explain what sides are?
Sure. Sides are the script. You will get your sides. It's based on the concept that in the old days when you would go into a Broadway show or a theater piece, that instead of sending you the whole script, they would only send you your lines with the cue line that prompted your line. So you would get your side of the conversation and the script. So when we send you the 3 pages taken from the script, or sometimes written just for the audition, Those are referred to as the sides. So you want to know what it is that the casting director is expecting to see from you. You also want to know certainly the facts, where it is. Make sure you know how to get there. You want to know who you're going to be meeting, who the point of contact is, so that you know if you've ever met this casting director before. Again, by knowing what medium it is, that's certainly important, because there are differences, obviously, in delivering a film or television script versus, displaying a theater script. If you sing or dance, obviously you have to be prepared for that. And then taking the time to prepare the monologues or the sides, having them warmed up. I make all my clients, because of my background as an acting coach, I make all my clients come in and show me their monologues. I have a young lady who's auditioning for It's a Wonderful Life in 2 weeks for a major regional theater. And so she has to have 2 monologues for it and sing. And so she will, she's going to come in, we're going to run through the monologues, make sure they're appropriate for the piece, for being Mary Bailey. And then make sure that the songs that she has in her book to utilize are right for this particular production.
And I guess it's also essential to add on top of that, what time is the audition and when is the shoot date, because you might not be available.
Right, exactly. Know when it is. Yeah, that's really the first thing. If you're available on the dates they're going to be shooting, otherwise you don't need to worry about the rest of it.
And and also knowing, like you said before, what it's for, because let's say it's a TV commercial or maybe a film, and maybe in the sides there are things going on in that scene that you don't want your child to do. Maybe it's just something very difficult, something compromising. There's language in there, and you just don't want your child to do it. So, but as a manager, what would your reaction be? You've got this great part, the director's asking for this kid, and the mom, says to you, hey, look, there's a shooting in the scene, somebody gets killed. I really don't want my child involved with that. What would you say?
I respect that. I respect it. We had to do the film Orphan. They had the script out. We could not allow the child to audition. They would not see the child if the parent had not read the script, because they wanted to make sure that parent understood everything that went on in that script. There was a very compromising scene where the young woman sees a man doing something that you don't generally want to see in public. The child also killed a nun. So there are that sort of thing that we wanted to make sure that the family was very aware of before they allowed their child to go to that audition, because you couldn't say after the audition, well, we decided we don't want to do it. That would be a real lick against both the young actor, but also the management team.
All right, so I've got another question here. Whenever you guys are wrapped up there, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, Joel.
So question about, I guess, management. I'm confused. Do I need to hire a manager or not? Is the question.
Speaking as a manager, yes.
Well, of course you'd say that.
It depends on what your representation is. Managers, in a lot of ways, have ruled the business for kids, because a manager can help. A manager is very much into the developmental process. The agent, to simplify, the agent is sitting at their computer. They're looking at the breakdowns come in as they come in every couple minutes, perhaps. And if a child they're working with is right for a certain job, they punch the button, they submit the kid. If the cast director likes the look of the kid in the pictures and the resume, or whatever resume they have, and like them and want to see them, then they send back a confirmation and a time to meet the child. Okay, so the agent's there, and that can work for a lot of kids. In musical theater, the agent, does that direct contact, sets up the appointments, so a lot of times a manager's not as necessary in the middle there. In TV and film, and you're working both coasts, and you're putting your shots on tape, which often is done at the agent's office. But the manager can be a lot more instrumental in the development, in the getting to the agent, and meeting, setting up appointments. If you don't have an agent yet, a manager obviously will help you to find the agents that you would deal with, either freelance-wise or actually sign with. So is a manager absolutely necessary? No. Sometimes it's the first step in building your representative team.
Well, Bob, maybe you can explain this. It sounds like if somebody is moving from a smaller market to New York or LA, it seems like, and you're a child, it seems like it would be unbelievably helpful to have a manager, make contacts for you, all the things that we talked about before. If you're living in a secondary market, and maybe you have more experience in other markets than I do, but I know like on the East Coast, in Virginia, D.C., Maryland, a lot of the agents don't represent kids, and there are managers who represent kids. And so when projects come up and agents need kids, they contact the managers of kids. Do you know, like throughout the country in most smaller markets, do agents generally represent kids, or are there mostly managers who do that?
Well, in the regional markets, now, of course, D.C., Maryland, I mean, you have some great manager teams, Linda Townsend, Camera Ready Kids,
right
down that area. There are a lot of areas don't have specifically managers. We very often say you don't need a manager in a local market because those agents are very often not franchised. And if they're not franchised by the unions, then they're in essence a manager. So even though they may say the such and such agency in Asheville, North Carolina, they're really sort of a manager because they're not franchised. They're not dealing directly with the union. So
so a lot of them will work with children.
Right. Yeah, most and I would say in most of the regional markets. That type of agent, their primary marketplace is children.
So it sounds like, if they're in a smaller market, they might not even have any options, and they might only have an agent to go to for representation.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say just that there are really very few people in the local marketplaces who will establish themselves as a manager. I mean, there are certainly those out there that you can find, but you will find many more that will want to establish themselves as a non-union agency as opposed to being a manager.
Hey, well, Bob, I know we only have a couple minutes, so one of the last things that I wanted to touch on was pilot season, or pilots, because I know it sounds like in today's time period, the pilot season is no longer a season, and it's things that happen kind of year-round. I was hoping maybe you could just, I'm sorry, what's that?
It's kind of like pilot year.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe you could just, briefly explain what pilots are and just, how you were as a manager, what you do with pilots.
I used to love the days when I thought the pilot was a guy who flew the plane. But the pilots are the first, back years back, every new show started out with a 1-hour pilot, or it would start with that, or it would start with, even more often, a movie of the week. And it would be a 2-hour movie that would set up for what would become a 1-hour episodic. Nowadays, the pilot, we have them, the half-hour pilots for sitcoms. We have numerous ones for Disney and Nickelodeon every year. All kinds of new ideas, but it's the test episode that basically introduces the characters. It's like what would be the first episode seen by the public, generally. But it's the presentation of the entire idea and the presentation of the characters, so that that we would buy. And looking at that, the studios or the networks will go, I like that idea, give me 13 episodes, or let's book you for a year, 24, 26 episodes. Okay.
So basically, so when you're managing kids and you find out there's pilots, what exactly would you be doing with that child?
I would be sending every kid I had in to book that show, every kid that was appropriate for it, to book the pilot, and then if they are selected for the pilot, then they're obligated to that show. And sometimes they'll use a pilot a second time around. If it's not picked up, but very close, say in that first pilot season, say which is let's say mid-January to March, and it's not picked up right then, they may pay you to keep you under contract to try it again in the fall, which is what was considered the next pilot season, mid-August to about October. Now, like you said today, those have gotten very muddled because we're shooting pilots all season around, but they're still being bought during that time period, primarily. So you want your child to be in a pilot because that can book them therein books them that television show, and you could be under a 7-year contract to that show and end up on something like the Cosby Show or Family Ties or something.
And I guess the hard thing about the industry is even when you book a pilot, which is an unbelievable task and a tremendous success, still there's a very good chance you're going to be unemployed, a few weeks after that, because after it doesn't get picked up.
It is, but you will see the same kids in pilots because it's not necessarily based on the kids. The writing, the adult actors, the whole relationship between everybody involved in that piece, and does it fit into a schedule? But we get a chance to see the kids. Remember, every time a child books a job, no matter what it is, somebody's going to remember it, and especially that casting director is going to remember it. And so there you'll see kids in pilot after pilot after pilot after pilot for 2 or 3 years before they hit the big piece that ends up booking them for 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
Hey,
Bob.
Well, Bob,
before we let Bob go, I've got one last question, Aaron. Sorry, I know he's got to get running here. But, Bob, if you were telling a mom or a dad who's just starting out, someone just fresh off the press, they don't know what they're doing yet, they're just getting started, can you give us, the first action steps, maybe a little short list? What do we do to get started with our kids acting in doing that?
First thing you want to do is play with, like, having them do commercials off of television, see if they can memorize things and put them on camera and see if they like it. Start with local theater. Let your little girl be Gretel in The Sound of Music. See if they like it, see if they have the tolerance for it and the patience for it. See if you have the patience for it. Start with your local market. Don't feel like you have to run to a major market right away. Start locally with a community theater, school shows. If you never do school and community theater and stuff, you don't know anything about theater. If you can't just go to New York and be on Broadway because you've got a good voice. There's a lot more to it. For TV and film, start playing on camera. See if your child likes having their picture taken. For print things, if they have that precocious sense. And then start sending with digital pictures. Nowadays makes it so easy. Just take some pictures yourself and go online and find local representatives, but established representatives with a legitimate background. Don't get swept away by the local little teeny modeling school that while they can be very good for the community, that says, well, we can make your child a star. If anybody promises they can make your child a star, you probably ought to ignore them because nobody can guarantee that. But start at the local mode. Start with pictures. Don't spend a lot of money on it because you will in the long run have to spend a lot of money on it to get where you want to go. But hopefully you'll have the right guidance by that point. And start trying to meet the right people to do it. Start putting out the feelers. Don't be afraid to call someone who is established in New York or LA to ask a question. And that's why things like this webinar, is so great, because it's giving people an opportunity to hear from professionals what those right things are. So many people come out of the blue. Take your time. Be patient. Nothing happens overnight. Best overnight success takes 10 years. Old adage, but it's always true.
Wow.
So, is that a good start?
That sounds great.
You're quite welcome. My pleasure.
Hey, Bob, thanks so much again. I can't wait to see you in person sometime soon.
Cool. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Buddy, say
Bob was at an audition, and there are a lot of kids there, so they're getting a chance to hear his answers, even without hearing the questions.
Okay, so I'm going.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
see you, Bob.
So, welcome back from the break. Our next guest is Patrina Herman. For over 15 years, Patrina has worked inside the top agencies of the acting and modeling industry. She has developed many new faces in fashion and commercial print. Patrina started her first agency, Select Model and Talent, in Orange County, California. After 3 years, she expanded her agency and moved it to Los Angeles. Recently, she decided to open a new agency called Professional Model Management. Her talent works regularly with many powerhouse names, booking jobs for Guess, Abercrombie, Target, Nike, American Girl, Men's Health, JCPenney, Mattel, Macy's, Ralph Lauren, and the list could probably go on and on. But Patrina, welcome so much to the session today.
Thank you. How are you guys?
Hey, doing great. So glad you could be here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm very excited.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. So, Patrina, I got a bunch of questions for you. Let me start off. We just got finished talking with Bob Luke, who was talking about management, and I'd love to have you talk about what are the responsibilities of an agent.
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I did want to correct a little bit of something that Bob said. Nothing against Bob. I love Bob, and he's a great manager. But not all agents just sit behind the computer and push a button. Me personally, I don't do that. I personally pitch my people. I call clients. I call casting directors. I call whoever I think that they're right for as far as projects. So it's really important for me to get my people out, my kids, my adults, everybody. So I do a lot of pitching.
And I'm sure that for somebody like you, and it's kind of like with everybody in the industry, everybody does things differently. And
Yeah.
from what I know about you, you also take a real interest in the talent that you're working with. They're not just, bodies for you. And, you spend time with them, you talk with them, and it's true. Like everybody does things differently. There are some agents like you who are the ones that, I'd love to be involved with who, really personally care about the people they work with. And they're not just, viewing their talent as, dollar signs for them. So, I'm glad you did bring that up.
Thank you. Yes, it's important for me for people to know that I really do genuinely care, and I spend a lot of time educating people, and that's why I keep my agency small and boutique, so I can have that one-on-one attention with each talent that I work with and the parents, and they can call me and we can speak about whatever is going on at that time.
But that is unusual. I mean, because a lot of agencies go the other route. Maybe I shouldn't say a lot. There are quite a few.
There
who
are.
just
It
literally
is
could have
very-
1,000 people in their files, and they're just supplying and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of
No.
having a business.
Exactly, and that goes back to earlier when you said asking questions when parents go to visit agents or managers. How many people do you represent? What kind of clients do you have? That kind of thing, so they can know how big their pool is and their talent and how many people they represent. So it can kind of give them an idea of how much attention they are going to get.
Mm-hmm. And so as an agent, so what are your responsibilities?
Basically, my responsibilities as an agent is to meet people and develop them to where I think that it's beneficial for them in the industry, whether it's for print ad, commercials, whatever the case may be, what's going on in the industry at the time. But I like to give a lot of information. I like people to know that I'm working really, really hard for them. As an agent, I do work with a lot of managers, but as far as what an agent does on a daily basis, we actually negotiate rates, usage, all kinds of pricing as far as where their photos are going to be seen. It's my job as an agent to protect every single talent that I represent. And I really take pride in that because as we know, there's a lot of people out there that get taken advantage of, and it's important that you are in a really good relationship with your agent so you can have that openness and honesty about where to go and what to do as far as agents and managers are concerned.
And you also wear another hat. You're a bill collector as well.
Yes.
Really, I mean, that's part of the agent's job, which is a very important one, which I would never want to have to do because I'm not good at it, but you're the one that makes sure that your talent gets paid.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? Everyone always asks me, how long does it take for me to get paid? I want to get paid just as bad as they do. So when a talent books a job, the first thing I do is invoice the client. And for print jobs, it's a standard 90 days, just FYI. And for, union stuff, it's 30 days. So, we're waiting to get paid. I just did a Jamboree job last week, and the client called me and said, we're still waiting to get paid. So as soon as we get paid, we'll pay you guys. So, it is tough.
And I can tell you one of the advantages, and later on in the workshop, I mean, I will talk about teaching people how to market themselves, and that's not a way to take away any business from agents, because what I suggest is when you market yourself, you still want to send it through your agent. But I don't see any reason why you can't try to help make things happen. But one of the issues that can come up is, if you're doing this job on your own, and you try to bypass an agent and you don't get paid, really, what are you going to do? You're not going to hire an attorney for a $150 job. You could always do small claims court, but ultimately you're not going to have that much recourse. But as an agent, you can say to the photographer, hey, look, if I don't get paid, you're never working with any of my talent again. And that could have a major impact because there could be a huge ad campaign taking place and your models get hired. You find out the photographer who's going to be shooting this is the one who ripped you off. And you're going to call the client and say, hey, look, if you want my models, great, but not with this photographer. So you can really create a lot more leverage that way and making sure you get paid, and also you're the one that can fight, and the model doesn't have to deal with any of that stuff.
Right. I have an issue with a lot of people doing things on their own because they don't have that protection. I've had people tell me that they've been approached all over, from being in a gas station to the mall, and, people approach them and say, oh, I work for Calvin Klein, I'd love to take your picture, so on and so forth. And of course, people get excited, they're, really want to be in this industry. So of course, if a photographer says, I'll shoot you for free to build your book, the first thing out of their mouth is, oh, great, okay, that sounds wonderful. But I try to tell people you have to be very, very careful, because if you take pictures with someone that you don't know, anybody can say that they're somebody, and we all know that it happens on a daily basis, that not everybody is who they say they are. And the effect that if they take your picture, you don't know where those pictures are going to wind up. I mean, they could wind up on a billboard in Japan, and or on the internet, as we know, with your face and someone else's body. And there's no way to protect you. And that's the purpose of an agent, is to protect you in those cases. I will not work with people that have not been in the industry a long time or don't have the ability to give me the right answers when I screen people. I can't, if somebody just calls me and says, hey, I want to hire 5 models for, A, B, and C, they have to send me credentials. I'm not just going to send my girls or my guys or my kids to just a complete stranger who says he's shooting for a major catalog. They have to have credentials. They have to send me their license or their business letterhead or their business license, or certain things. And photographers too. If I don't know them and they're just Joe Schmo, I'm pretty likely not to work with them. I have to see their book. I have to really meet with them and talk to them and have a phone conversation to really know that this is legit. I'm not going to take the chance.
Sure, and that's why when I'm talking about marketing yourself, what I recommend is when you're sending out, let's say, I don't know, a headshot or comp card, to an art director, creative director, photographer, in the cover letter, if you have representation, what you're going to say is, I'd like to talk with you about, doing a TV spot. You can contact me through, and then have your agent's name there. And so that way you can help yourself and by marketing yourself, but still you're sending it through your agent because one of the things that's really tricky, especially I find that especially in commercial modeling, there's no union, so there are no specific set guidelines as to how much you're going to get paid. As a matter of fact, I wanted to ask you for most of the jobs that you do, and let's say it's dealing with a kid, is there a standard type rate for a commercial modeling ad that, let's say, it's not in a high exposure format, it's running in a magazine ad? I guess really what I'm getting at is, like, for instance, in New York City, the going rate for an adult commercial model is $250 an hour, but that gets renegotiated for every project. For kids, are there certain bases that generally they get paid, or does it, once again, is it vary from project to project? Is it by the hour, by the day? Are they generally buyouts? How does that generally work for you?
Well, once again, it's really about the client. I mean, everybody works differently. Some people do hourly. Some people do, a day rate. Depending on the age, if I work with, I did a Gerber job, and a couple of babies, they got $75 an hour, and they worked 3 hours because of the laws. They can only work a certain amount of hours, but once again, it really all depends on the client and how much I can negotiate. Where is it going to be seen? How long is it going to be there? How long are they going to, is it going to be on the side of a bus? Is it going to be on a billboard? Is it going to be, where is their image going to be seen? So it's my job as an agent to negotiate all those rates. But, standard, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, finish.
But standard rates for commercial models is usually, in LA here, $150 an hour, 2 hour minimum. And that really does depend on the client. Some of it is a little lower, some of it's a little higher. But the clients that I work with, it's usually, my kid the other day, made $800 in 6 hours. So Wow. It really all depends on the client.
What a lot of people don't realize, and it's another reason why you do not want to try to just take on jobs on your own, is because a lot of people don't realize that there's something called a high exposure format. And like you were saying, those are billboards, posters on the side of a bus, on a package, on the internet. And typically the agent is going to be able to negotiate a much higher fee because you get overexposed in certain markets when you're up on billboards. And the other thing that can happen is if you're doing an ad for, a specific, let's say, fast food restaurant, and this is up on billboards, well, no other fast food restaurant's going to hire you while you're up there.
That's
so
right.
You could potentially lose work by being in a high exposure format. Now, you want to be in a high exposure format, but the agent understands that, so they will negotiate a much higher fee or get you a bonus on top of whatever you're getting. But one of the things I was just wondering, what is the youngest age that you will work with for kids?
Well, I like to start at age 5. That's a really good age for me because I feel like the kids take direction at 5. They kind of, you can tell if they really like what they're doing. The little ones, I have maybe, a handful of little ones because every now and then I do get some really nice auditions and jobs for babies, like I said. But I really don't like to that often take on anyone under 5. I've had kids come in that were 3 years old and acted like they were 25. So,
they were smoking cigarettes and stuff, were they?
It's just unbelievable. Their vocabulary and the way they present themselves is just so rare. And people always say, well, what do you look for in a child? What do you look for? How do I get my child to do certain things? It comes natural. Your child's either going to be very outgoing and friendly and, have that special gift, or not. So it's not something a parent really should push. It's something that just comes automatically, and we see it as agents. We see it when they walk in the door. We know it's just it's there.
Now, I know, like with some of the ads that I've done with infants, these kids are like 4 months old, 5 months old. They always hired a couple of them.
Yeah.
Is that something that you find as well?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have like twin babies sometimes, because actually, we represent, when I was working at Coast to Coast as a print agent there, we actually represented the twin boys in Desperate Housewives when they were little.
Wow.
So, in that particular case, they wanted twins, but a lot of times behind the scene, if it's babies, one gets a little cranky or hungry or, whatever the case may be, so they switch the kids off and nobody knows. It works out perfect.
Well, I remember once I did something for Parents Magazine and they wanted twins, and they actually brought in triplets just to make sure, because they didn't want to stop production just because, like you were saying, one kid starts crying or he's getting hungry or not taking direction properly at 3 months old, and
Absolutely. And they do that with animals as well, believe it or not.
That's right, I guess, because I assume, like with kids too, there are a limited amount of hours that that they can work as well, and
Right.
sometimes you got to switch them off.
Exactly.
Now, with the people that you work with at your agency, I know everybody works differently. Do you have exclusive contracts with the talent that you work with?
I do, and a lot of people ask me why. Why does it have to be exclusive? Listen, everybody can have a different agent in every city. That's not an issue. But for me personally, the reason why I have an exclusive contract is because I work very, very hard for my talent, and I do everything I can to get them seen, to get them out there, to get them promoted, to get to the level of where they want to be in their career. So for me, if I know that someone's with 5 other different agencies in the same city, and they're working with other agents or other managers, and they're submitting and they're doing stuff just for the sake of it, that kind of puts me in a bad place. Because if I call you up and I say, hey, I have this audition for you for a commercial print ad, and you say, oh, well, so-and-so already called me for that. Well, really? I mean, I just worked my butt off to get you in the door, and this is a request. Because me personally, I don't send people out on cattle calls. I don't send them out just for the sake of sending them, because that doesn't benefit me and it doesn't benefit them. We both want to make money. Everybody wants to succeed. So if they're asking me for a blonde, blue-eyed, child, I'm not going to send them an Asian or African American. I mean, it's just, and unfortunately, there are people out there that just want to keep you quiet, and they just send you out on everything and anything that they can send you out on. I don't work that way. And that's why I want an exclusive contract.
And how long? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to make sure that people are going to be as committed as I am to them. I want to know that they're committed to me as much as I am committed to getting them auditions and getting them in front of the right clients. So that's why I do it.
And how long is that contract typically for?
It's a standard 2 years. Listen, I always tell everybody, if things aren't working out and you're not happy, I'm not happy, I'm not going to hold you to this. There's no reason, there's no benefit to me holding you to a contract. But if we're making money and you're booking jobs and you're doing really well, I'm not, and you say, oh, well, I want to go be with a bigger agency, I want to go do this, which happens a lot. And, I don't think that's fair, because I've worked really hard to get you where you're at. So I'm not going to let you out of your contract if we're both doing very well and, we're making money and being successful. But if things aren't working out, absolutely, they can cancel at any time.
One of the things that I hear from talent, and especially from parents of kids, and they say, well, like I'm working with this agent, and really nothing's going on. I've been with him for a couple of months, and normally I say, well, this stuff takes time. It's you don't start getting out there and start booking things overnight. I mean, of course, sometimes those things happen, but typically those things take time. But maybe you can kind of explain why it might take 6 months, 5 months, 7 months before, really, things start to happen where you're starting to get auditions and go-sees.
Right.
What is that
Well,
process, and why does it take?
it's interesting that you bring that up because people do say that to me. They say, I've been with this agency for 4 months and I haven't gotten one audition. Well, you've only been with them 4 months. You've got to give them a chance to do their job. So for someone to walk into my office and say, oh, they were with so-and-so for 3 months and they were with another person for 3 months, that right there is a little bit of a turnoff to me because I have to know that there's a commitment there. And normally, I've had kids where, listen, they go out on their first audition and they book the job. Then again, it might take, 10, 15, 20, 30 auditions before they book a job. It takes time. You're up against thousands of people. You're up against thousands of kids. You are in competition. You have to be available. A lot of times I call people and they're not available. I have to replace them. There's so many different factors where they don't understand that, hey, you're the one who booked out for 2 weeks. You went on vacation because, for whatever reason, you had a family function, and that's fine. But you have to put that all into consideration. So, I like to say, at least if you're not getting any calls, the 2 red flags for me is, one, if you're not getting any calls at all, then 90% of the time it has to do with your photos. And you need to be proactive with me. You need to email me. You need to check in with me. Don't sit by the phone and just wait for me to call you, because I need to know that you are giving me photos that are up to date, your sizes, if you've changed anything about yourself. Because if I'm submitting you and then all of a sudden you walk in and the client says, oh, well, you don't look anything like your picture, well, then that's a problem. You're not going to book the job. So, it goes back to square one. The reason why you're not getting work very quickly is because a lot of times it has to do with both parties. So
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I like to say to people that, at least 6 to 8 months, if you're not getting an audition, then, we need to talk. We need to sit down. But if you're getting a lot of calls and you're auditioning every week, but you're not booking any jobs, then that usually has to do with you. And that has nothing to do with us. We're doing our job. We're getting you in front of the client. But if you're not booking it, that has to do with you.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is agents don't book you for the job. It's all you can ask of your agent is to submit you, promote you, get you in front of the right people, but then it's up to the talent, to actually make that happen. And also what I think a lot of times people don't see on my side of it is that, when you get a phone call, let's say from a photographer, and they're having a go-see, and they might say, look, you can send 5 people. All right, so who are you going to send? You're going to send the 5 people that have booked the most jobs, that are, are always, available for you, people who answer your phone calls, people who return your phone calls in a timely manner, people who show up on time. And so,
Aaron, you're 100% right. That means the world to us. If I hear from people at least, once a week or once every couple of weeks, and they just touch base with me and let me know what's going on with them, then they're there.
And the crazy thing is sometimes, because I realize this is my fault. Sometimes, I could be with an agency for a long time, and then all of a sudden I don't hear from them. And when I call up, sometimes somebody will say, well, who is this? What is this in reference to? And I start to feel a little insulted. But the fact of the matter is they changed personnel. There's some new people there. And it's easy to, for me to just, blame somebody else. But the fact of the matter is I didn't stay in touch well enough with that agency for me to know there are new people there. And these people don't have a clue as to who I am. So instead of blaming the agent, I think a lot of times we, the actor and model, have to take on a lot of that responsibility. And it's up to us to stay in touch with the agent. And I think the other thing that's really important is you've got to have great communication with your agent. You have to understand, how do you want your agent to, how do you want the talent to stay in touch with the agent? And so you're saying it's okay to email you once a week, or?
Yeah, I respond very well to email, and I always tell my people, listen, if I don't respond to your email, then I didn't get it, because I always respond to my emails. It's a lot easier to get to me by email. It's a lot quicker to respond, and I want to hear back from you. If I don't hear back from you, that's a problem for me, especially if I haven't heard from you in weeks or a month, and then all of a sudden I call you and I say I have a request for you for a $10,000 job or whatever, and you tell me you're in Hawaii. Oh, well, Katrina, I haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks, so, we just kind of took off. Well, that's unacceptable. That's completely unacceptable, and most of the time I'll drop people because that's, the models are like buses. Every 5 minutes there's another one coming.
Oh, that's comforting to hear.
Sorry. You have to have tough, Erin, you know this more than anyone. You have to have tough skin for this business. And you've got to be right in everyone's face. You've got to be proactive, and you've got to be in communication. You have to have a good relationship with your agent, your manager, whoever is representing you. And a lot of agents don't want to be bothered, or they say, you know what, only call me between, 5 and 6, or only call me between these hours, because, we're working. If I don't want to, if you just call me just to say hi and chat, that's all wonderful and great, but I'm working, I'm submitting you, I'm talking to clients. I don't have time to sit there and just shoot the breeze with you. But after hours, no problem.
Well, and the other thing too that a lot of people don't understand is, if you're taking phone calls from models who just want to say, hey, how about those Dodgers? Man, what's going on with, well, all of a sudden, you might be getting, 20, 30 phone calls from people who just want to schmooze with you, and you make your living spending time on the phone and on the computer and meeting with people. And when models and actors take your time away from doing that, you can't make a living, and you can't get work for those people either. So it's really important to be sensitive to the agent's needs as well. But certainly, if something comes up, you're unhappy about something, you're not booking any jobs, then it's our responsibility to arrange a time, and once again, find out from your agent how they want to be contacted, and then sit down with the agent and say, look, I don't know what's going on, but you send me out. I'm very happy. I'm just not getting anything. And then it's up to the agent, to be able to sit down with the talent and say, hey, maybe you need to take some more, some new acting classes. Maybe your photo, like you were saying, maybe your photos just aren't selling you well. They were good for you a couple of years ago, but times have changed, and the look is different. Maybe your photos worked well in another market, but they're not working well for you in LA. So I think it really is important.
The key really is communication.
Yeah, and that's true. And and the other thing too, and I've heard this from a number of agents. One of the major complaints that they have is when they are trying to reach, whether it's a parent or a child or an adult. And they've got these crazy long-winded outgoing messages, on their cell phone, and they're doing monologues and drum solos and playing songs.
Or rap songs and all kinds of stuff.
And here, you've got like 5 minutes to send a bunch of people information about a go-see, and you're listening to this long-winded outgoing message, and unfortunately, there's a good chance you might just hang up and go to the next person.
Absolutely.
Because you don't have the time to sit through a drum solo.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
So Patrina, this is Joel. I have a question. I asked Bob this earlier in this session. I'm going to ask you as well. Getting started, let's say I'm a new parent of a new somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience. Let's put it that way. My son or daughter wants to get started. How do I get the attention of an agent? How do I start? Where do I begin? What are some things I can do? Give me like a short list of things I can tangibly do to get started.
Well, first of all, research. Do a lot of research on agencies and managers, and that's the benefit of the internet is you can do research. Make sure they're licensed and bonded by the state and they're legitimate. Obviously, managers don't have to be, but agents do. Agencies are licensed and bonded. I would say, for me personally, I like people to email me a snapshot on my website. I have a submissions list of, your name, your height, your weight, specifics. Really just a snapshot. I don't want them to go out and get professional pictures. It's not necessary until they are actually signed with an agent. Because what happens is when you go out and you get professional pictures and then you go and meet with different agents, they might not agree with what you picked. And I always tell the moms too, you're looking at these photos from, and also the kids and the teens and the adults, do not pick your own photos. Talk to other people, because especially someone in the industry, because you're looking at your photos from a personal standpoint, and you're always going to be a lot more critical. And we're going to disagree because I'm looking at them from a marketing standpoint. So it's best when you're first starting out to just send me a snapshot. I always like a full body, a close-up of your face, and your stats, which is all your sizes. And then if I'm interested, I'll set up a meeting, and then we'll go from there, and we'll discuss, future stuff. But it's always good just to send a snapshot. People send photos of the fully makeup, and they're all decked out, and it's very hard to imagine an empty canvas when somebody has all that stuff on. So we like very natural digital snapshots.
Hey, actually, Katrina, at what age, or is it age 4 or 5, when you think that a child should put together a headshot or a composite sheet?
Yes. Yeah, I think that is a good age. They're not changing as much. Anybody under 5, literally weekly, and monthly, their sizes are changing so fast. But 5 and up, I find it to be where we could use their photos for at least 3 to 6 months, and they're good. Anyone before that, I usually just use little Polaroids or snapshots, because they are changing so much. Their sizes and they're growing and that kind of stuff.
And when you're sitting down and meeting with a parent of a child, I realize it's very important for the parent to kind of switch roles and basically, be seen but not heard unless you ask the parent a specific question, because I assume you really need to get a sense of what this kid is like.
Right, and there's nothing more really. I don't like to use the word annoying, but sometimes it's a little difficult, and it gets frustrating because I do want to see what your child is like. So I'm asking your child the questions, I'm talking to them directly, and a lot of times the parents interfere and they answer the questions for them. And I know they're trying to be helpful, but I really need to see how they interact with me, because if they don't interact with me, then how are they going to interact with a casting director or a big client of mine if I send them out? So it's really important that they do let the child just be, and let them wear what they want. Let them just be who they are. Don't try to, make them something different. And a lot of times parents say to me, "Oh, she's normally not this shy. She's normally not like this." And I go, "Well, I get that, and that's normal. But guess what? In this industry, you have 3 seconds to impress a casting director, and then they're like, okay, next." So if your child is shy, I would say, you got to spend time working with them at home before they come in to meet with an agent. Because if I can't have a little bit of an interaction with them, it's going to be really hard for me to sell them to clients, because they're just going to walk in, they're going to freeze up.
And are there any specific questions that you would like to be asked as an agent from a parent, who's trying to figure out, are you somebody that they would want their child to be represented by?
Yeah, I like people to ask me, interview me like I'm interviewing you. This is a two-way street. It's just like, when you go to a doctor, your first initial impression, you have to feel good about that person who's going to examine you. So for me, I like to interact both ways. I want to know what you're about. Ask me what I'm about. What kind of a schedule do I have? Are you able to call me? Are you able to email me? What kind of clients do I have? How long have I been in the business? Who do I work with specifically? Questions like that are pretty basic. But you want to just interact and ask as many questions and be prepared. So when you do meet with somebody, that you have questions prepared like that, as far as, how many people you represent, how many kids in my child's age group do you represent, or their ethnicity, or their, specifics. Because obviously, like Bob said, if I have 5 of the same kids, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But for me, I try not to take on a lot of the same looking types. I like to keep maybe two or three, just in case, as a backup, because people do cancel or they get sick or
they're booked out.
or they're booked out, exactly. So I do need that backup.
And how does it work generally for auditions or go-sees for kids? Does that happen after school?
90% of the auditions for kids are usually from 3 to 7. And now I'm only speaking for Los Angeles. I don't know about other states. I'm just speaking for California right now. But most of them are from 3 to 6. Every now and then we do get, a noon or a 2 o'clock or a 1 o'clock where they have to be pulled out of school a little bit early. And I know a lot of people don't like to do that, but every now and then, this is the commitment that you have to make. And I don't want to hear the story that, they have ballet or they have piano lessons. This has to come first. This is very, very important that this come first, and you make the commitment. If you are signed with an agent or a manager, you make that commitment that this comes first. This comes before birthday parties. It comes before sports. All that stuff is very important in kids' lives, I know, but this is a job and this is a business for us, and we take it very seriously.
But then the job itself would take place during the day.
Yes. Yes.
So, Patrina, you bring up a good. This is Joel again. I'm sorry. As a father of two little boys, I just have a question here. I'm hearing both you and Erin talk about the industry, and it sounds to me, and maybe some other parents that are listening in, it sounds pretty cold and very commodity. Like my child's going to be a commodity. But the important thing I think you said that I just want to highlight is that this is a business. It's something that's serious, and it's not something that's just a hobby for you. If you want to do this seriously and get paid for it. So I was thinking, as a father, I'm thinking, man, I feel like my kids, you see only keep 1 or 2 kids of the same type in your agency. Boy, my kids are just kind of this like product in a sense. But in a sense, that's really what we're selling as actors and models. Is that correct? Do you understand my question or what I'm saying there?
I do, and I know sometimes it comes off a little harsh, but you have to understand we get so frustrated when, people, they have this image and these thoughts of the industry and what it's like and how great and exciting, and it is, don't get me wrong, it's a great business. I've been doing this for a very, very long time, and obviously Erin's been doing it for a tremendous amount of successful modeling, commercial modeling and acting. So it's wonderful, but we get very frustrated when people come in. I mean, I've had people come in and they're like, I live, eat, and sleep this. This is all I want to do. And then the next day I'll call them for an audition, and like Erin said, or Bob might have said earlier, they'll say, oh, well, I got into a fight with my boyfriend, or, my car broke down, or, there's every excuse, or, they have soccer practice, or, I can't pull them out. They have a big game today. There's no way. So it's things like that frustrate us a little bit, because if there's no communication, we don't know about those things. So once again, if the communication is there, if you email me and say, hey, my son has a recital tomorrow, don't submit him on anything, then great. We've communicated, and I won't submit, and I won't have to cancel. So it works to everyone's benefit if that communication is there.
And I think the other thing for parents to keep in mind, I think this is really important. Yes, this is a business. You run it like a business. There are lots of responsibilities. But, in some ways, it's like any other extracurricular activity, except there's money involved. But, even if your child had no interest in acting or modeling, but they wanted to play baseball, well, you're going to have to do the same thing. And then your team becomes a priority, and that's what you're going to focus on, and that's what you're going to spend time practicing, and that's you're going to take lessons to learn how to hit the ball better. And it's basically the same thing. I think the key thing for parents to always keep in mind and to constantly watch is to make sure the kid is still having a good time. Because once it feels like a business for the kid, even though it is a business, but once it starts feeling like work to the child, then I think it's time to maybe start looking elsewhere. And when I've had parents say to me, well, I want my child to get started in the business to help, pay for college, and I just stop them and say, really, that's not a good reason to enter the industry. If that really is the sole purpose, is to make a bunch of money, there are much easier and safer ways of doing that. Because this is, there, as everybody's been saying today, there are no guarantees. But, even for me, look, this has been my business since 1986. And if I didn't still love doing it, if I didn't have a great time when I'm on the set, and I'm not saying that it's always, it's always enjoyable, and driving for 7.5 hours each way for an audition that I'm probably not going to get, but I have to because the agent called, no, sometimes that part isn't fun, but the work itself, I still love doing. And so I just think it's really important for parents to, really keep an eye on the child. And if you're hearing from the kid, I really don't want to do this anymore, listen to your child very carefully.
Yeah, it really has to be fun for them, and they really have to want it. And if it's not fun and they're like complaining, they don't want to do it, I don't want to go on the audition, then it's probably time to stop.
And one of the things I didn't ask, just a couple of like real quick technical things, and I know Bob had mentioned it kind of quickly, but I just want to verify it with you. So for commercial modeling ads, you will take, is it typically a 20% commission fee?
For print, it's 20%, yes.
Okay, and then that's once again, there is no union, but I know of like one or two agents that ask for 15%, but that is really unusual. Pretty much every
Very
agent
unusual.
that I work with, it's a 20% commission fee, and if it's a non-union acting job, then typically although I can't take on non-union work, but my understanding, it's a 20% commission fee. And certainly if your child is part of the union, whether it's the Screen Actors Guild or AFTRA, then at this point you're only allowed to pay a 10% commission fee. But it sounds like agents are pretty upset about that figure, and they want that to rise a little bit higher sometime soon.
Yeah, any union is 10%. And another thing I want to add to that a lot of people don't know. Sometimes when people talk about getting paid on print jobs, they don't realize that the agents, and this is very important, the agents take from the client and we take from the talent. That's how we make our living. We take on both ends, because if a client is calling us and saying they want to hire one of our models, then we're charging them a commission. So just, let that be clear. A lot of people get confused and they're like, well, why are they taking, 40%? Well, we're not. We're only taking 20 from you. We're taking the other 20 from the from the client, sorry.
And one little piece of information I wanted to offer about getting paid, and this is something that I do, unfortunately, on a regular basis, but when that 90 days hits and I haven't gotten paid yet from a print job, and I've heard a lot of complaints from agents where models will call, or parents will call in and start screaming at the agent, it's been 90 days, I haven't gotten paid, where's my money, what's going on, I don't want to wait. That's not a good way to deal with an agent, and you have to understand, the agent wants to get paid as well. So what I do is I will contact the agent when the 90 days are up. I'll have all the information in front of me, or I'll just send an email and I'll say, look, I just want to let you know it's been 90 days. We haven't gotten paid yet. Not I haven't gotten paid. We haven't gotten paid. I did this job on this date. It was for this client, this many hours. This is how much we should be getting. And I just wanted to send you a reminder. And I found that is a much, much better approach with agents than to call and in some ways kind of insinuate, hey, you're not doing your job, you're not getting me paid, hey, are you holding on to this money, what's going on? And all of a sudden you start building this little negative relationship with the agent. And so anyhow, for any of you who are in that position and do not contact an agent before 90 days are up for print jobs, and that's what I would highly recommend doing. And I just found that to be, matter of fact, I just did it 2 days ago. Found it to be very, very helpful. Well, why don't we do this, if it's okay with you, Petrina, because I know I've got a bunch of other things that I need to get to in the next segment. Can we spend like another 5 minutes here and just answer some of those questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay,
great. Okay, so what was that again, Joel? How far
should I be willing to travel with my child for an audition or booking?
Well,
you can take that one first.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the job, how much it's paying, and how far you're willing to go. I mean, personally, we're not going to send you on something that's going to take you 7 hours to get there. I mean, it's very it's not very usual that we would do that. But most of the stuff, you have to drive all around LA, or you might have to go to, San Diego or Orange County or, different parts of California. But we're not going to send you on a whole day trip. I don't think that's I've never experienced that. So I don't know about you, Aaron.
Well, see, I'm in a different situation. Look, you're in one of the three largest markets in the United States. So, if somebody is working with you, yeah, they don't have to travel that much, unless it's a booking where they're shooting it in another location, and that puts it in a whole other world where you're getting paid for, for travel and extra, fees and things like that. For me, because I live in a secondary market and I work with many agents in many, many different markets. So in order for me to make a living at this stuff, I do have to travel. And so I am in a position where, I don't, it's not like I've got to, take a child out of school or, be dependent on taking somebody else around with me. So it's up to me. But sometimes I've also heard, how far should I think of trying to have representation? How far away? And, I think basically it's like Petrina was saying, it's going to be up to you also to decide how far are you willing to travel on a regular basis. And that's why agents in New York, agents in LA, or even Chicago for that matter, typically they don't want to work with people who aren't in the area, because even though I know people will say, oh, look, if you book me for a job, I'll fly in. It doesn't make any difference, even if they live on the East Coast. But, the reality is, you might get less than a 24-hour turnaround before somebody needs to be seen. And most people aren't going to fly into LA for a go-see or an audition and then fly back to the East Coast, and then in the best case scenario, get a call back or maybe even get another booking. And so it's unrealistic. And not to say that sometimes that can't work. Sometimes you can send in a digital shot. Sometimes you can send in an audition. There are exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, you've got to be there. So I think that's an individual call. Are you willing to travel 2 hours on a regular basis? If you live in DC and want to work in Richmond, Virginia, are you willing to make that drive? So I think a lot of it depends on your lifestyle, how comfortable you are, and how badly, you want to work. Hey, Petrina, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Aaron, thank you, and I hope I helped a lot of people, a lot of parents, and future prospective models and actors. I look forward to, working with new people all the time, and I wish everybody great. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And we got to grab some coffee next time we see each other.
Yes, absolutely. We'll talk
Sounds
soon.
great.
Thanks, Petrina.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks.